Welcome back, friends. It's another episode of The Mindful CEO, and I am your co-host, Chris Angell, here with your other mindful co-host, Aaron Hendon.
What's up, party
Hello.
people? Hi.
Hello. Welcome back,
Hello.
Aaron. You just
Thank
got
you.
back from a mindfulness intensive, dude.
Yes.
You can't talk to anyone for 10 days.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, they call it a retreat, but there is nothing retreat like it.
There's no chaise lounges by the pool.
Exactly. It's not a retreat. I mean, you're meditating for 11 hours a day,
Wow.
and it is not, it's work. It's 100% work all the time, even when you're not meditating. When you're not meditating, there's literally nothing else to do. You don't have books, you don't have
Yeah.
journals or anything. So, you're lying down or you're walking out in the field, and then that's it. So
Sounds hard.
it was definitely the most physically challenging thing I've ever done.
Wow. That's crazy.
But wonderful to be back, and a great experience. I mean, I would do it again for sure. I'll be doing it again. It's like, you do a cleanse or you do
Yeah.
a 75 hard. It reminded me of that, like that kind of a space, which I usually have very little tolerance for. That kind of edgy.
Would you say
kind of thing.
contempt? Would you even say contempt
I
for
would
it?
say I definitely have contempt for 75 hard. Or that whole modality of ice baths at 4 a.m. and that kind of shit. But here I am, 4 a.m.
Yeah.
for a spell at 4 a.m. meditating so it's got that vibe to it. Anyway,
I want to interject because I'm feeling like the Beatles with the Maharishi, and it's February 1968, and you're about to write Dear Prudence.
I would hope
Yes,
so.
good
That
call.
I wrote all kinds of shit in my head while I was not meditating, so it's perfect. Well, Kirk, given I refuse to introduce you, take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, what you're doing. Like, what do you want the listeners to know about you? It's delightful to have you on the show. Thanks for being here, and thanks for making sure you were present and known.
Thank you for having me. I feel like I've already dated myself to have wherewithal
Yeah.
about 1968, what was going on in pop culture at that time. I'm a font of information. Sometimes it's accurate. But aside from that, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a executive and career and life coach. I am a employee of ESPN. I assist with the production of mostly college sports on radio and television. I teach spinning classes. I'm an author. I'm a cyclist. Whatever I want to be on any particular day.
Come on, let's go.
You're a Renaissance man. Yes, I like it. That's
The
great.
Swiss Army knife of
Yes,
executive
exactly.
coaches. Excellent. Yeah.
And it's my job to cook dinner tonight too. So there you go.
Well, it's always my job to
Maybe
cook
this is
dinner.
a place to kick off here. And I know Kirk, before we hit record, I had asked you about the ESPN thing and what you do, and you had said a statistician, a talent statistician, which I'm assuming has to do with collecting data and measuring things, all that kind of stuff. Yes.
Exactly. My job is to enhance the intelligence of the talent broadcasters,
Yeah.
play-by-play analysts who are already highly skilled individuals to begin with. But the question I ask is, what data can I provide them with that is going to enhance this production?
I was just watching some of the PGA Championship. I'm a golfer, so I love the majors. And you can hear Trevor Immelman saying some stat that you're like, I know somebody's feeding him these stats. They don't just carry in their pocket, obscure stats from 4 years ago when so-and-so did something or other, and I'm assuming that's sort of what you're saying. Like, oh, you've got a stat and you can kind of feed people things. Yes or no?
Yes, and when you've been around as long as I have, these things are embedded in your mind to bring up items like the Beatles in 1968 or who won the World Series that year, which was my St. Louis Cardinals, who won it the year before, the year of the pitcher, et cetera, et cetera.
Very nice. Go my New
I
York.
brought
That's one at the next year. So
You and Aaron should be just fast friends with all of Aaron's love for
yes.
sports. The reason I bring it up is because I think one of the things, Aaron, we've explored in our show is that many times is the tension between mindfulness and CEO-ness. And I think sometimes hustle culture, Lamborghini leaning, ice baths at 4 a.m. can sort of start to I'll say over measure because I have my own contempt for this. Like I'm going to wear my Aura ring and I've got my Apple Watch and I'm going to try to measure everything to the nth degree so I have a competitive edge. And I think at some level this
Biohacking.
yeah, I mean, that's statistician stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like if I get enough data, then I'll be optimized enough to do something. And I think sometimes the over uh preoccupation, the obsession with stats can prevent us from the mindful experience that we're living and creating in our business. And I'm just curious, Kirk, your thoughts on, where does stats have a role in the world of mindfulness?
It's interesting, Aaron, and Chris, I was doing a leadership development program earlier today remotely, and I made a reference to those I was talking to about war. And this isn't the group, this isn't the act of battle, but it's wins above replacement.
There you go.
And we're all measuring. And so I asked, you could have another podcast guest here who is going to get you higher data points than maybe I will. That would be kind of a wins above replacement scenario. But we all have a value to the organization, to each other, to whoever it is that we're working with. So a measurement tool, but hold on just a second. I'm in such a rush to make things happen, to get a high war that I get into too big a hurry. And then I fumble the ball, I make an error. So the mindfulness comes in of return to your fundamentals, do things well, but don't get ahead of yourself.
Hmm. Hmm. Aaron, I'm curious your thoughts on
Yeah.
that because you're more of a sports head than I am.
Well, so wars are wins over replacement. It's a baseball stat. Yeah. It's not in any other
Yes.
sport. And I don't know I'm now interested. What goes into how does a wins over replacement? So it's a unit for this player. How many wins does this person provide for the team over someone else?
Exactly.
If you're going to replace this player, how many wins would you lose?
Yeah, you get an Aaron Judge, let's say, versus a journeyman. Aaron Judge may be worth 4.3 additional wins for the New York Yankees. So you've got to
And is it over an
evaluate
average
that
player?
value.
Is it over an average player?
That's over the average player. Wins
fine.
above a replacement who would be average.
Okay.
There are some that I guess would have negative wars, and they are called minor league ball players.
So war is wins over replacement.
Yes.
Wins above replacement.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I thought for a minute we were talking about war.
No. But
That's how over my head. I'm like, oh yeah, good guys.
But
That's great.
Kirk, you even said, it's funny. I just got to say, because now you've had two music references, which is a big thing on the show for me, is, that you first said it's war, not the group, which is excellent. That's the first place you went to with war was
Cisco
the
Kid and all day music. What can I say? The world is a ghetto.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, so Kirk, I think, so just so everyone knows, that's what war is, wins over replacement.
Yeah.
And so if you're, I imagine here you are in a leadership coaching session and you're suggesting that each of the leaders there has a war value, that there's in that context, it's not war, but it's, whatever, it's earnings over replacement, or it's some other, it's not wins, but
transactions
over replacement. Or,
right. Yeah.
Some measure of their effectiveness. And, so I think this is a conversation I have in the leadership training program that I deliver with Landmark. And that's, there's three words that generally get collapsed and used interchangeably. That's results, measures, and statistics. That often if you're in a room full of executives, they'll use results, measures, and statistics interchangeably. But if you bring some distinction to those three words, you get a lot more power, and you begin to hear what Kirk is pointing to about you get too far out over your skis, you get too attached to this thing, because the results are what you want to see happen in the world, what you exist to fulfill, your purpose. In the context of the mindful CEO, it's your purpose. The result,
the cathedral. The
is the
cathedral you're building.
cathedral,
Yeah.
is the ultimate result that you're out to produce in the world by your work. That's the result. A measure is the would be it's not even a measure is a invented something that you can count that shows you're on the path to fulfilling the result. It's some result that happens in the world that you say is consistent with it's some outcome in the world that you say is consistent with the result. Something you can actually measure. It could be
But made
dollars.
up. But you made it up. You
Yeah,
said
well,
this
you
is what
said
I am
this measures
deciding.
that. You
Yeah.
said this
Yeah.
measures that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then a statistic is a way of comparing results. So war is a statistical measure. War is comparing measures, various measures. You got it. What do you get in there? You get your what measures go into a war to determine wins over replacement? What kinds of things are you measuring?
Well, you're going to go to the five tools of a player. Can they run? Stolen bases,
Mm.
percentage of successfully stealing bases. Do they hit for average? Do they hit for power? Do they drive in runs? Do they do the little things like advanced runners, hit behind the runner, so to speak, a baseball idiom that's there? Um,
Mm.
the intangibles that go with that are more difficult to measure. What's their clubhouse presence? Are they
Mm.
supportive of their teammates? Do they create a toxic environment?
Okay, good. But
Those are
so
kind of the
this is really good. So
non-statisticals. Yeah.
inside those intangibles, if you don't have a way of seeing it and counting it, you can't use it in the statistic. There's got to be a way. Who's ever used. So if a war is going to be a uniform, useful measure, it's got to be consistent no matter who uses it. Is a war something that's if I tell you that person's a war is 4.0, someone else could look at a different set of measures and say, no, their war is 3.0, or the measures that go into war set across Major League Baseball.
That's a set formula. It's like earned run average, batting average,
Right.
those
But
kinds of
doesn't
things.
put in intangibles.
Universal statistics and a tool for selecting what's going to enhance our team
Great.
most.
But if you,
Yeah.
so good. So then there's all that stuff has been, measures have been established, set up. Then you can use those statistically to determine this thing called war. But war isn't a result, right? Wins are the result.
Yeah.
Wins above replacement.
Right. That's what you're measuring. You're measuring what a replacement player would do, an average player would do, and what this player does. That's the two measures, right? How many wins did they get? And the result is your team wins games. That's what you're out to. Really, the result is, World Series championships. That's always the measure in baseball. But so what Kirk's pointing to, if you collapse those, then you start doing things that are weird. You're trying to move the statistic. You're not trying to get more wins. You're trying to move the statistic, right? Well, I'll get more runs, right? And I'll neglect this other thing. There's a way of playing the statistic, I'm sure, where it's weighted in one particular way, that if you played it in a particular way, your war would look inflated compared to the actual number of wins that you can do. And finding ways to game the system is all in that. So if you take it out of a sports metaphor and you put it in leadership, Kirk, I'll just turn it back to you. What are some ways that people try to manipulate the measurables? I mean, we all know how this, we all can think of Enron and the other ways that people have manipulated the measurables and the statistics to look like they were getting closer to the result.
Mm.
They compromise their wisdom sometimes. In other words, let's take a CEO, and we all have strengths, we have areas of opportunity. And perhaps my strength as a CEO is analytical work. That's what's gotten me to where I am. I'm a logical thinker. But the role that I'm in right now is going to require me to be networking, marketing, connecting with others. Not my strong suit necessarily. So what do? Well, I try to get better in those areas, but I don't want to get better to the point of sacrificing what I'm really good at, which is the analytical, logical part of my job. So, what do? I look to people that I can surround myself with that are going to buoy up those things that I'm not as strong as. I look at how I run my team synergistically, some of the parts being greater than the whole. And what I always said when I was leading people is, I'm so glad you're here because you're around to help cover up my incompetencies, which was a pretty strong way of saying, I want this synergistic approach. You're good at that. I'm going to utilize you here. You're good at this. I'm going to utilize you here. It allows me the opportunity to do what I'm best at. And that becomes a winning formula, playing within yourself.
I really hear Moneyball in the background of this
Yeah,
conversation.
totally.
Oh, yeah.
You've got, and I can hear the bridge to mindfulness, because if I can not separate myself from my obsession with a statistic, and I can use the statistic to access the wisdom, use the word wisdom, which I like. If I can sit back and observe and be mindful, have beginner's mind about my statistics. What is this telling me? What's showing up here? What
Right.
wants to express itself? And then listen maybe to intuition. Like, I have an intuition about, I think you can now partner with numbers, partner with stats
Yeah.
in a way that allows you to be wise and effective. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that
I
was,
was and I was good at it. At meetings, I would say, well, that's going to be a 23.6% increase in such and such. And then I would shut up. And for the next 15 minutes, people would debate on
Mm.
that. One, I'd shifted the conversation, gaining me power, but also gaining power from the standpoint of um, I've moved that conversation. I'm going to stay silent for a while, and then I'll interject back in again when it's appropriate.
and and when you were saying there's 20, that'll move the needle 23.6, where were you looking at, and how is that, what's the source of being good at that?
That's a measurement tool. I was an institutional investor in my past life and had this gift for numbers. That's why I'm doing what I do for ESPN. I knew my strength wasn't determining what the appropriate investment was going to be. That wasn't my strength. I was not a certified financial analyst. But to compete in that arena and to have success, go to what my strength was mindfully and let others debate what are we going to select here to invest in.
Hmm.
That wasn't my strong suit. I would throw some things in, but that was other people with a different knowledge base than me.
Huh.
Good. It's
Yeah, it is good.
you know I, that was I was thinking, Chris, before the show, the thing, one of the things that showed up for me this last week in the meditation retreat was, Kirk, when you're just going back to what you were saying about, you put your attention on the wrong thing. I've had this inside the tension of mindful CEO. I've had this question for a while about how do you, achieve equanimity, a place of no judgment, a place of here I, of objective observance of a situation inside of a container that has a definite intention and direction.
Hmm.
We're in this company where, things needs to make money to survive. We have a mission to fulfill. We have a vision that we're out to realize. That's a direction. It's not neutral. It's not equanimous. It's not okay if we fail. It's not, it's got an intention. It's just not okay. It's just everyone's playing.
Yeah.
The game's got to go in that direction. Same thing with a ball player. The ball's got to go in the hole. And so that's the direction that but where does equanimity fit in that scenario? How do you just stay, or is it even useful to stay equanimous in that state? And I sort of resolved it for myself because now as I'm saying it, it's obvious to me now because I've resolved this for myself. But I like sports actually is a better metaphor, better than what I had, which was a river. Um, I had sort of a poetic metaphor for it that the river doesn't strive to get to the sea. Um, it's just going that way.
And
It,
now it shows up how in the sports
it
metaphor? How is it different?
well, it's perfect because a game has a definite intention.
Uh-huh.
The batter is there to hit the ball. The pitcher is there to get the ball by the batter. Whatever, right? You're a golfer, so you're there to, hit that ball clean and put it in a particular location.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you aren't, so there is so in those scenarios, the game scenario or the river scenario, it's already going in that direction. Everything is already organized, right? The other way I looked at this was like, everything is organized to grow. Life itself, you're organized to grow. You're organized to avoid pain, seek pleasure. It's a natural law of the universe. Rivers don't strive to get to the sea. Rivers just head to the sea. The game is already in play. No one has to tell Tiger Woods to get the ball in the cup or, whatever, Roger Clemens to get the ball over the plate or why am I using Yankees? This is fucking horrible. I should just kill myself that I would use Yankees as the reference.
Because I started with Aaron
I
Judge,
just can't.
so
It's
it's my
so
fault.
offensive to me. So bad that I would have those names come out of my mouth. Ugh. Blech. All right.
That's
So,
hilarious.
but those guys already know what they're doing, and it's already organized for that. So you don't have to have any attention on the being equanimous about the game. The game itself is not your objectivity is not required. It's not necessary. The natural law of the universe is already moving it for your growth, to win the game, to do all that stuff. Equanimity is useful on an individual level in the moment of your next action.
And you've got me thinking now about a river runs through it. But going back to that metaphor
Yeah.
of you go with the flow,
Yeah.
you swim upstream like a salmon, do you battle it, do you fight it? Um, for a CEO, first of all, we all come into situations with bias. That's based on our upbringing, things we've experienced, things we know to be factual, think to be factual, whatever. But the difficult part of it, let's say that the CEO is reporting to a board or somebody, is my job is to execute and carry out whatever it is the stakeholder wants. And that may not be in alignment always with what my prejudices may be. So, what is the degree as a CEO that you can make adjustments to, okay, I'm going to divorce myself and align myself with this versus I'm going to swim upstream a little bit because I think this is going to be what's best for the organization. Then there's the other thing that sits out there with boards that CEOs fight with is what is what's the right thing to do? Ethical considerations. Is it in alignment with what's legal? How's it going to appear to the stakeholders? Is it seem right, just, fair? All those factors that go
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, it's good. I think that's, in that's where equanimity was the big word at the mindfulness, at the meditation retreat. It's a Buddhist retreat, Buddhist practice. So being equanimous was the whole space of it. And but in that space, the CEO, look, that being operating with equanimity, operating with objectivity, you can see, and where meditation comes right in is you can see your biases. Your only access to going beyond your bias is slowing down. That is the access to going beyond bias, is slowing down. That's what
Yeah.
meditation provides, is the opportunity to slow down and look to see, what am I seeing this objectively, or am I seeing through my view? And if you slow
Yeah.
down, you can see the answer. That is definitely something you can in fact see if you slow down enough. Or another
And
way.
and 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 we get into a hurry beyond our capabilities. We get on that treadmill and we don't turn down the speed. I had a couple of episodes of that here in the past couple of months, leaving my wallet places because I'm in a hurry. Why are you in a hurry? Just because I'm on the treadmill right now. One of them cost me $150, but the blessing in it, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I missed that flight. What am I going to do with this vacant time that's here? I've always driven by the Billy Graham Library. I'm going to go see that thing. I was very
Yeah.
blessed to have that
Nice.
opportunity. So you never know what surprises will come up, but the lesson in all that is, son, you just got to take it down to a pace that's within yourself. Play within your game. Don't go up there try to jack home runs. That's not what you do well.
Mm. There's a piece in this conversation that is standing out to me about the objectivity part, Aaron. Like, you could be a CEO, your identity, what's giving you who you're being in the moment is your CEO-ness and the direction you're headed, and all that thing is giving you who you're being. But then there are other people that I think are probably attracted to this conversation who are, so that's CEO with a little mindfulness as a hack to get performance and production. That's one version. Another version is somebody who's stepped into the woo-woo woods of mindfulness. They have really embraced the idea of being objective about life and embracing beginner's mind and coming back to like how is all of this connected? And I think the challenge here is when you I saw this. This keeps showing up in my YouTube feed, but it's like this thumbnail that says it has a Carl Jung quote on it, something like, um, uh, you're not driven because your ego died." Basically, like, like you no longer feel driven because your ego died. And to me, this is like the goal sometimes of mindfulness, is to get to the objectivity where my ego isn't running the show, and I can have a bigger purview of what's all involved in the thing. But the challenge is, once you step your toe into the woo-woo woods, once you start to embrace mindfulness, I'm not as attached to the direction anymore. I'm kind of like, what's the point of the game? Why am I even playing this game? It brings me no meaning anymore. You get you picking up what I'm putting down,
I
Aaron?
do, yeah, and I think ultimately, then if that is in fact the where you land, if questioning the game is where you land, then you have an opportunity to reinvent the game.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I have these CEOs that come to me because they've been on that roller coaster treadmill ride. And what have I done that really matters?
Mhm.
And so we get to this impact question. And for some, it comes late because they've compromised health, they've compromised family. But I enter into it with a lot of those folks. What is your dream? What's your ambition?
Yeah,
What still needs to be fulfilled that's here now that we can get rid of all this rubbish that's around us?
yeah, and that's what we point to, Kirk. We call it building your cathedral, um, on the show. Like, that's the metaphor for what your what Simon Sinek would call your big why. Um, if you haven't taken the time to develop that, then you have likely been playing a game that is bankrupt. And even if you have been playing that, you can still declare any game bankrupt, right? And at the end, the thing that had you discover its bankruptcy was the natural order of things, that you are designed for growth. You are a living being and you are designed for growth. You don't need to, it's inherent in all living beings that they grow. And if you can take out the encumbrances, if you all you're really doing is removing the restrictions to growth in any living organism. That's all there is to do, is to remove you don't have to so if your calling or your cathedral is big enough, it will remove a whole bunch of restrictions just by being big enough. There'll be things all, when a lot of times when Kirk, I'd imagine that shows up for people when there's some horrible health concern happens. People report, like they realize that they're about to have wasted their whole life because some horrible thing. So then they have some big revelation about what they really could do with their life. A whole bunch of concerns just disappear in that. Things that they constrictions were, damming up that river, but that river wants to flow. And just removing the restrictions has the river flow. It just has it go by itself. You don't have to worry about, am I forcing it? It's going to go by itself. And the more you can step back and the more you can slow down, like Kirk was pointing to, I think the easier it becomes to see, oh, this is blocking my ultimate growth. And how
CEOs I was always intrigued with were those who would listen well, and you'd have all this conversation taking place. And then at a moment, they would say, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm seeing. And they would maybe answer things with a question and almost kind of walk away. And everybody's like, huh? But that was the impact, that was the power.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean that was the impact and power of what?
I was in a group of men, and it was interesting. There were eight of us, and I would say one individual out of the eight dominated 50, 60% of the conversation, talking about one thing or another. There was a facilitator that was a part of it, and he would say a few things, then the other five of us would chime in a time or two. But there was one individual who maybe would comment twice during the hour-long meeting. And what he would say would have a lot of wisdom to it. And everybody would turn, listen to him, and kind of want him to say more, but it was like going to a movie that's good. At the end of it, you know it's good because you want more. That's why he had
Mhm.
Godfather 2 and 3. Later, I came to find out he never did say who he really was. He was the person who started the organization.
Wow.
And this has been 15 years ago.
Mm.
The impact that left on me, observing how he operated, told me a lot about effective leadership and mindfulness within that.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, and I think too that kind of makes me think about the piece where if you're on the treadmill, you can kind of get stuck in whatever thing you're measuring, whatever goal you're up to, and not step back. I think the benefit of getting objective, being mindful, stepping back is your ability to sort of see the river flowing in front of you. Like, what's happening here? What questions should I ask? What really matters? What doesn't matter? There's a lot of meetings and conversations that happen in business settings that aren't really important. They're treadmill conversations. They're conversations that happen to keep it moving versus conversations that step back and ask a better or a bigger question. Um,
And,
you
and,
know,
and I love the way that sometimes those meetings are concluded a half hour after the regularly scheduled time, and the leader will say, well, I think we got a lot accomplished today. And I
Right.
leave asking myself, what?
that's right. Yeah, that's so good.
Well, I think that's a big piece of, a mindful CEO's job is to, I mean, if we're just going to talk about the waste of meetings, fine. I mean, we could do that.
Yep.
Um, but it's all, in my view, it's about what do we intend to accomplish? If you can get that laid out at the beginning, right, about intention, what's the intended outcome of this meeting? Again, result, and then we get to how are we going to measure that? And then you could, if you need a statistic, but what's the result that we're out to produce in this meeting, and how are we going to know that that happened? And if you don't set that up at the beginning, the meeting's going to be highly likely a waste of time. Highly likely it's be random if it's not.
Yeah, setting the agenda. And like when I coach clients, typically a meeting will begin with, what is on your agenda today? What do you
Right.
want to talk about? Why is this important to you? What will make this a successful meeting? How will you measure that?
Yep.
Then after we've had discussion to define those things and develop a plan, at the end of it, did we achieve what you set out to do today? If not, what else needs to happen in order to get you there?
Yeah.
Good. Good.
Yeah. I feel we're in the middle of a tension, Aaron, like when we talk about how in our show and in our um, mindfulness community, like the magic happens in the paradox. There's a paradox. It's like the tension of the paradox here is, yeah, you want to have a meeting with a direction. What's the intention? What's the goal? And at the same time, you don't want to override that meeting with so much intention and goal that you can't be mindful. Like there's an art here to dancing, to dance in the appropriate measure of mindfulness versus
Well, I don't
production.
know. Chris, I think it's something that you and I do all the time. Is if you set up the ground rules, set up the container, set up the purpose, then it's not just rambling for the sake of rambling. It winds up,
Right.
and you got plenty of room to play inside. Same thing with the.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like you and I have enough experience and practice with dancing in that tension that we can be appropriate with the space we've given it. But if you're on the treadmill, like Kirk has said, and you're so given by the direction and you're not objective, you're so driven by what the hell are we doing here? What's the point? Get to the point already, that you can't actually hear what's in the space between the words being said.
Yeah, very good. Yes.
Yeah.
100%. If you're on the treadmill, it's good.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what we were talking about. Like
on the treadmill on your way to the Lamborghini.
Yeah. And 75 hard. And my ice bath after work.
Exactly. The ice bath after work. On the treadmill to the ice bath.
Yes. Yeah.
Very good. All
My,
right.
my GMC pickup truck gets me to where I need to go, and I'm happy it's got satellite radio and the air conditioning works.
Yeah, exactly. Kirk, what final words do you have for people listening in terms as it relates to mindfulness and measures and all of that goodness?
Move.
Yeah.
Be in action. And that doesn't mean you got to move locations or do that, but make sure your mind is active. It's thinking, it's contemplating, challenge yourself, because with that, you're going to challenge others that go along with it. I wrote a book. There it is. Thoughts for My Kids and Other People's Kids. It's full of vignettes about communication, leadership that is pertinent for kids between the ages of 4 and 84, which are all somebody's kids. So I want to leave that as a possibility to listeners and viewers as well. And also say that if you like where this discussion has gone from my perspective, I'd love to hear from you. Talk more about it, how I might be able to help you get to a better place in your career and maybe in your personal life as well.
Great.
Where can they go, Kirk, to find you if they want to reach out to you?
I'm at theseedsowercoach.com. That's my website. And I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I've got Instagram, Kirk McCarley. And I don't think there's any others of us that are out there.
All right. I'll put the link in the show notes, everybody. If you want to learn more about it, just go to the show notes and click on the link. Awesome. Thank you, Kirk.
Kirk, thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys. It was a joy. We went all over the place, but I had a good time. I hope it's beneficial for those who joined us.
That's how we do it here, Kirk. Aaron, thanks as always. Those of you listening, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to subscribe to the channel if you want to know future episodes are released. Like the video, for God's sake, if you liked it. And then if you're listening on a podcast directory, you know what we'd love is a little review. Give us a little review. Aaron, tell us about your next upcoming mindfulness.
We have 2 cohorts starting on June 4th. I pushed it back a week. So there's How to Live a Grateful Life in a Fucked Up World. That's at thegratefulbreath.com. You can find out about that. That's Wednesdays at 6 p.m. On Zoom. And then there's How to Live a Grateful Life in a Fucked Up Industry for my real estate brothers and sisters. And you can get that at therealtorsedge.com. Oh, free, no upsell, no recruiting, just
beautiful. Just straight up mindfulness.
Straight up mindfulness training.
I love it. All right, good. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. Catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.